Welcome back to Conscious Fever, hosted by Carl Price.
I ain't scared of you motherfuckers.
You are listening to Conscious Fever, hosted by Carl Price.
Either way, I don't give a damn what you think you are entitled to.
Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've been waiting for. So listen responsibly.
It's the best of the best. It's the one and only DJ Ice, Louisville's coldest DJ.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
Hey, good evening. Welcome to Conscious Fever here on Ice Entertainment Television, Conscious Fever Radio. The heat. Okay. I'm Carl Price, your host here on Ice Entertainment Television, Conscious Fever Radio. We are talking about something interesting tonight. You saw it in the banner. And what was in the banner was we're talking about Sweet Home Alabama. Just got sweeter. Let me see when that comes back up. Just got sweeter. Sperm, egg plus 2 equals an unborn baby, and abuse or discipline. So what we're going to be talking about. So this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the Alabama Supreme Court decision, and we're going to also talk about abuse of discipline. We're going to show you a video tonight where a young lady basically went to her son's school because she got a call and she had to leave work. And basically what she did was she basically beat the SHIT out of her child right in front of the school. And Paul Mullins is a family court lawyer here, so it's going to be interesting for me to hear his take on this. But in any case, I'm Carl Price's Conscious Fever here on Ice Entertainment Television, Conscious Fever Radio. When I come back, we're going to dive right into this Alabama Supreme Court decision. This Alabama Supreme Court, not the United States Supreme Court. Alabama Supreme Court has basically ruled, and I'm sure Mr. Mullins will correct me if I'm wrong, that that little sperm and that little egg, that liquid that doesn't have legs, eyes, a brain, can't breathe, doesn't even have a placenta on it, is actually an unborn child. And if you harm it, you could possibly face criminal penalties. And definitely if you harm it, you can get sued for wrongful death in the state of Alabama. So we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. We're going to have this interesting legal discussion tonight.
You are listening to Conscious Fever, hosted by Carl Price. You are listening to Conscious Fever, hosted by Carl Price.
So the decision, let me just get my bones here together. The decision is LePage versus the Center for Reproductive Medicine, PC. And it was a lawsuit that was filed in the state of Alabama. And I'm going to read this. Basically, the plaintiffs were parents of the deceased embryos. Is that how you pronounce it? Embryos.
Embryo.
And they were seeking basically damages, which we in law we call damages, we call it money damages under Alabama's wrongful death of a minor act statute. Okay, and that's a law in Alabama that says that if you kill a minor, anyone under the age of 18, then you can be, the parents, the guardians can be compensated. The defendants, the reproductive medicine location, basically argued that the act did not apply to extrauterine children, or vitro, as opposed to utero. Okay, while those individuals who had basically put their sperm and their egg in a tube were arguing that that law did apply and it didn't contain any exception. At the trial court level, the case was dismissed, but the Supreme Court of Alabama ruled that the law did apply to unborn children. And the court also goes on to discuss the definition of a child. Nowhere in this country is a child defined differently, but in the state of Alabama. Um, and basically they refuted everything in the dictionaries and the legal texts that otherwise describe a minor. They talked about the relationship of the wrongful death statute and criminal homicide, but at the end of the day, they basically determined that IVF is going to be in trouble. So if you are a young lady who decides to I don't say decide, but obviously there are a lot of women in this country who have issues with conception and having children, and so they reach out to for this process of IVF. And in the process of doing that, that's the process that they go through. Uh, in vitro fertilization, I think is the way it's pronounced. And in the course of doing that, they leave things. So and when I say they leave things, what they do is, you basically they get the sperm out of from from the father or the potential father, and they get the egg from or what they need from the mother. Put it in the tube. We used to call them test tube babies back in the day. Put them in the tube and basically they store it for several days. Then they can inject it into uh, uh, the potential mother. And then, of course, the mother is determined, hopefully, a few days later, if everything is successful, that she is actually pregnant. And that's the way that process goes. So I didn't know what an embryo, I knew what an embryo was, but it's been so long since I've studied that stuff in bodies uh, that I needed a refresher. So maybe y'all need a refresher. So for those of you who don't know, and those of you who already know, an embryo is the early stage of development of a multicellular organism. In humans, an embryo is formed after fertilization of an egg cell by a sperm cell. And as you know, this is the stage of development before the fetus stage. And that's important because the Supreme Court, the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe versus Wade, was all about the fetus, right? The viable fetus, et cetera, et cetera. So the fetus stage, and during this stage, the cells begin to differentiate and form the different tissues and organs of the organism. The embryos are crucial for the development, as you know, of all complex organisms. Now, fertilization is a process by which a sperm cell from the male and an egg cell from the female combine to form a new genetically unique organism. In humans, fertilization typically occurs in the fallopian tubes of the female reproductive system. During fertilization, a single sperm cell penetrates the outer layer of the egg cell and enters its cytoplasm, right? The genetic material from the sperm containing half of the father's DNA combines with the genetic material from the egg containing half of the mother's DNA to form a zygote, which is the first cell of the new organism. The zygote then undergoes rapid cell division, forming an embryo that will develop into a multicellular organism. Fertilization is a crucial step in sexual reproduction as it brings together the genetic material from both parents to create a unique individual with a combination of traits from both parents. Now, fast forward to a process they did not have prior to 1977. The process commonly known as test tube babies is actually a reproductive technology called in vitro fertilization, or IVF. Now, let me just give everybody that didn't know, like me, wasn't updated on this stuff, a brief explanation of the IVF process, also known as the test tube baby procedure, right? So, number one, the ovarian stimulation. The woman undergoing IVF is given fertility drugs to stimulate the ovaries to produce multiple eggs. This is monitored through ultrasound and blood tests. Number two, the egg retrieval process. Once the eggs are mature enough, they are retrieved from the ovaries using a minimally invasive surgical procedure called transvaginal ultrasound aspiration. Third process is fertilization. In a laboratory setting, the retrieved eggs are fertilized with sperm from the male partner or donor, and this can be done through traditional insemination, where sperm is placed with the eggs in a petri dish, or through intracytoplasmic sperm injection, or ICSI, where a single sperm is directly injected into each egg. The embryo process, or the embryo culturing process, the fertilized eggs, now embryos, are cultured in a special incubator for a few days to allow them to develop and grow. Right? Number five, the embryo transfer process is one or more healthy embryos are selected for transfer into the woman's uterus. This is typically done 3 to 5 days after fertilization. The sixth process is implantation. If the embryo successfully implants into the uterine lining, pregnancy occurs. A pregnancy test is usually done after a couple of weeks to confirm pregnancy. IVF has provided hope, as we all know, to many couples struggling with infertility by enabling them to conceive a child through assisted reproductive technology. The term test tube baby originated from the early days of IVF, when fertilization and early embryo development were observed in glass containers or test tubes in a laboratory setting. Okay, now that gets us to why we're here tonight and what we're going to talk about, the Alabama decision. Sweet Home, Alabama. I'm going to bring my guest in, and sometimes co-host, Paul Mullins. Good evening, Paul Mullins.
Hey, Carl, what's going on?
How are you, sir?
I'm all right.
Um, so let's talk about this Alabama decision. I know we've read this, have read the decision, and I have briefed everybody on really what the decision was all about, right?
Yeah.
So, and I know you've read it. So why don't you brief us on basically what the hell is going on in the state of in Sweet Home, Alabama, I should say, because our topic, Paul, is Sweet Home, Alabama just got sweeter to sperm plus egg plus a tube equals an unborn baby.
Yeah. So the parents sued, I guess, the doctors at the in vitro for mishandling their unborn children, according to Alabama. Um, the eggs that were fertilized were in a test tube, and they were apparently dropped by someone. And I'm having a hard time talking about this because I just find it, honestly, I find it laughable because of the way they found this ruling. The court in Alabama used, do you remember this part, Carl? She used the Bible as a source to justify her ruling, and she used one of the Ten Commandments as a source to
There's actually a
justify
lot
her.
of he's, and that's part of the problem.
Right. So used the Ten Commandments, the sixth commandment, thou shalt not kill. When I look at this, the problem that I have is an in vitro fertilization, the one that's outside the womb, isn't always successful. So to me, anything in these petri dishes are not human beings. They have a chance to be human beings.
Right, but I think you're a little ahead of us, Paul. I want you to explain to everybody why this decision is so appalling, because basically what the court said was if you drop the dish, you can be
Right.
sued.
You can be sued. So what's next? Can you be charged with murder? Now, they didn't go that far, and they tried to distinguish the difference between murder and the criminal code and the definition of people versus their civil case definition of people. and children in particular using this statute. But how long would it take, Carl, for him
It's not
to
gonna
jump that slope and say, well,
It's not going to take that long.
if a child is a child at the moment of fertilization, and that's a critical part, the moment of fertilization, that is a child, whether it's in the womb or outside the womb. The moment of fertilization is a child. And I have a whole nother side on that because they base this on religion. They based it on God's will. We do all that, but the fertilization process is done by human beings and scientists, not God.
Right. So let me ask you this, Paul. So because this is what's troubling about this, it was decided, it was a case that was deciding an Alabama statute, interpreting an Alabama statute, and trying to determine the applicability of this Alabama statute. And I say that because that's important in this case, right? And the reason it's important, Paul, is because there's really not, on its face, a constitutional law issue, right? In other words, in law, if a state Supreme Court is interpreting state law, the feds stay out of it. And we talked earlier about maybe it can make its way to the United States Supreme Court or one of the federal district courts by way of the Commerce Clause, maybe for the reproductive centers. So
if you're an IVF doctor or a reproductive center, what do you do now? You move out of Alabama.
And apparently that's what they're doing. I think 3 have already decided.
You just pack up and move across the borders, and you just don't do it in Alabama.
Right. So let's just talk about the practical here, right?
So
and you didn't really go far enough. So if you're not going to go far enough, I'm going to go far enough and talk about the facts of the case. The facts of the case. You want to do that? You want me to do that?
Go ahead.
Okay. So basically, an employee that worked at this facility, the IVF facility, this reproductive center, apparently was carrying 3 different sets of I don't know what
test tube babies
of
test tube
Petries or test tube babies. 3 sets of them, 3 different sets of them, right? For 3 different couples, right? And something was burning this employee's hand. Or the employee got too close to something that was hot and reacted, which we all would generally do if that's the case, and we're going to drop whatever it is we're carrying in that hand. That's what this employee did. And when this employee did that, all of the sperm and the egg, I always call it just the blob. I know that's a little, I shouldn't go that far, but all of that was then
the children.
Well, I'm not going to call them children because that's what the Alabama court did, and we don't necessarily agree with that. And I think most people in the country don't agree with that. So what I'm going to refer to it as is that all of this stuff, if I can, the egg, the mixture of the egg and the sperm doing this thing, like I just talked about, with fertilization and all of that before it becomes an embryo, embryo. Basically, it fell on the floor and they couldn't use it anymore. So what happened was the couples who lost those, and understand that all you have to do is go back through the process. And maybe they thought the process was so onerous they didn't want to go back through the process. But all you have to do is just go back through the process, give a sample, let them get, eggs again, let the man give the sperm again. I mean, we're men, we could probably,
I made it
shoot
probably
sperm every day. But even at our age. But what I'm saying to you, Paul, is this, is that I'm just telling the people out there is that this person honestly was being burnt, dropped this stuff, it fell on the floor, and then these couples decided to sue. And they decided to sue for what we call in law wrongful death. That is, that if you're for instance, a good example of wrongful death is if you're in a car accident or you go to hospital, medical malpractice procedure, medical procedure, and then the doctor commits malpractice and you die wrongfully, that's a wrongful death. Right? So this Alabama Supreme Court is saying just because this person dropped this stuff on the floor, that the reproductive center can be sued, but they can be sued because the Alabama Supreme Court determined that what he dropped on the floor was actually an unborn child.
So Carl,
right? So I set that up.
So Carl, let me go another step. When you have these in vitro babies,
I don't have them.
I'm just saying I'm calling them babies because that's what they did.
I don't agree that they're babies.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
And I don't either. But I'm gonna take it another step. How do they store those babies? They freeze them.
Yeah, they freeze them.
So is that child abuse? That's
I mean,
the logical step. Child abuse?
I think
Freezing the babies?
no. Here's what I think. I think freezing I think freezing them is preserving them. So that's just like feeding a child,
Okay,
right?
no,
So,
I mean,
so
if I
I don't
froze-
think the freezing is a problem, but I know what you're getting at.
yeah, it's
The
stupid.
Alabama Supreme Court has gone so far as to say if you harm
Right.
that mesh, is what I'm going to call it now, or that stuff in any way, you can be sued. And the implication here, even though this was a civil case, Paul, the implication is that you could be charged with murder
Right. That's the next
for
logical step.
dropping stuff.
I mean, they went in this order, I mean, in this ruling, and declared that they wouldn't do that, but it sets the way to allow that to happen if they let this stand.
Now, in all fairness to the Alabama Supreme Court, they were relying on an 1872 law,
Right.
Which is the Wrongful Death of a Minor Act, right? And I don't know if you know the history of that law, Paul, but I would tell you the history of that law. Believe it or not, in Alabama, the history behind that law, even back then in Alabama, is that basically you could not basically. Well, let me just back up and tell you the history. The history was that former slave owners were killing basically slave kids. So when slavery ended, and they were going through all that process, in order for a child not to mature to a man to become a pretty good slave or a servant, sharecropper or whatever, they were killing the kids. And so that's where you get that law from. So,
And that law did cover unborn children as well.
and it did not cover unborn children at that time.
No, it covered unborn children. Pregnant women. It was designed to protect pregnant women from harm, but not protect women who didn't have it in their body and it's outside their body. So they made a distinction in this case and said it's no longer a difference between whether it's inside the womb or outside the womb.
Right, and that's the problem. So why don't we just tackle that, because that's the big elephant in the room, right? You have vitro and utero.
And utero, right?
Right, and the difference is one's inside the womb,
and utero,
and one is not.
In vitro.
Right,
and so they made no distinction between whether this fertilized.
So let's talk about, and listen, everybody. I want everybody to understand this, that I had this conversation when the Dobbs decision came out on this show. Y'all can go back and watch it if y'all want on YouTube or Facebook or wherever, Twitter or where else are we at? Anyway, but I had this conversation. The conversation that I had was that at some point these laws are going to start applying to men. Mm-hmm. So when men masturbate on a towel or masturbate in their hands, wash it off and throw it away, should they be charged with murder, Paul?
Yeah,
half murder?
Look, I can't put nothing past what conservative, ultra-religious people might do, because right now you're literally talking about frozen goo and someone dropping it, and I'm expecting, like any wrongful death, that the plaintiffs are on the other side going, "Oh God, that's my baby, that's little Joe." I don't believe that happened.
Right.
I just think people needed a way to.
I mean, come on, man. I mean, the reality is that it doesn't have eyes, it doesn't have a brain,
legs,
it doesn't have legs, it doesn't have sexual organs, and it doesn't even have a placenta attached to it.
And the science behind it is nobody, y'all don't want to hear this, but when you're talking about a fertilized egg, we're not much different from any other animal on Earth until more cellular division and you get to that embryo stage. So all animals share a certain amount of the same DNA. We share the same 99% of our DNA with, if you believe it, it's true, but chimpanzees. So we do. And so when you're talking about a fertilized egg, to me, I've always said this. I said this 20 years ago when I would argue with people about abortion. I say, A fertilized egg is not life. It's not a human. It's a chance at being a human or a chance at being life. I've always felt that way. So I've always liked the Roe v. Wade decision because I think it put a specific time date, which is if the fetus is viable outside the womb, you're a human being. Whether you're outside the womb or not is not the question. It's can you survive outside the womb? I always thought that was a perfect example. I know you're pro right, your right wing extremists. They might say that you are once the fetus is created, no matter how big it is, whether it's viable or not, that's fine. But now we're talking about what people have always said who are pro lifers, the moment of conception or the moment of fertilization. And people need to realize what that is actually what that actually looks like. It looks like goo in a jar. And now we're talking
Wow,
about it does.
that's sort of graphic, Paul. Looks like goo, goo.
We're talking about pregnancy within a fertilized
but
egg
you're
is
right. But you're
pregnancy within a couple days.
right.
I mean, and I don't consider that. And so, if you allow this line of thinking, first of all, most women don't even know they're pregnant the first day they're pregnant. So, if you're going to allow the fertilization point to be the moment life begins, the moment, I know that right wings always argue that, but if you allow that, then that means the day after pills now illegal.
Why don't you say people who are pro-life, not necessarily white
Right wing.
right-wing extremists? Because there are some Democrats who
Well,
are
but
actually
I think
pro-life.
I think that even whether you're Democrat or Republican, there are people in the middle who understand that contraception, day after pills, those would be fine. I think people are upset when when you start realizing that something is actually taking the shape of human beings,
Right.
arms, legs, sprouting, uh, brains, maybe an embryo.
Right. So, question,
But
Paul.
fertilization in a test tube, that's just too far.
Right. So question is how deep of a hole is the Republican Party going to dig? There are some Republican legislators who are now taking the position that, well, maybe we should pass a law like Alabama.
Well, I don't think it's a popular position. I think you have the minority view ruling the majority because we have seen in states like Ohio and Republican states where you would think they would be anti Roe v. Wade putting laws in place to prevent this.
Constitutional amendment.
Yes, and I
Right.
just
It-
they're not reading the room. They're just putting their agenda down everybody's throat.
right. How far? Well, I asked the question.
How far does it go?
No, we know how far it goes. But I guess my next question is in reference to, uh, you know, the Republican Party. If the Republican Party jumps on this, is this suicide in light of what we've seen in the midterms?
It's not suicide.
You don't think it's suicide?
No, because it's what they've been. Pardon my
No,
pun.
no, 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 Paul. When I say
Trumpeting.
suicide, no,
It's
I
what
want
they've
you
been
to
trumpeting for
right,
20 years. It's
right.
nothing
No, no,
new.
no. I want you to follow me. I know they've been trumping that for many, many years, but the point I'm making is that you just mentioned it. Ohio, blocked an effort to make abortion illegal statewide, right? So we know the sentiment in this country. We know where the momentum is. The momentum is that everybody, there's a lot of people who really prefer that Roe v. Wade still exists. And I think when women come out to vote, I think that this Alabama decision uh, is going to be detrimental. Now, whether it's detrimental to the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, it remains to be seen. However, most of these justices in Alabama are Republican. Alabama's a red state.
If I were a Democrat strategist, and I'm not, I would think it
You're
would
not?
be no, I don't
Oh,
work
okay.
for anybody. I would think that a good strategy would be to try to get some abortion type issue on the ballot to drive voters out to vote against Republicans. They need to do something if they want to take a hold of this issue. But if you do nothing and you just say, hey, in your campaign speeches, hey, the Republicans are bad, this is what they want. They've been doing that for as long as I've been alive. as long as I've known about politics, and it's never going to move the needle.
Yeah, but again, I'm just going to talk about some scenarios. And I know the earlier one I talked about was a little extreme, a man masturbating on the towel. But I mean, just think about it. Why would you want to even work in reproductive clinics now when all you have to do is make one mistake and you're going to get sued for killing a
Well,
child
so
in the state of Alabama?
all the reproductive centers will just move to blue states. That's what'll happen, and we'll be back where we were before Roe v. Wade, and people will just go to other states to get, um, you know,
Right.
procedures.
But the
And
next question, oh, go ahead.
well, the people will just move around to get procedures, and the next thing that'll happen is, will you be prosecuted when you come back to your home state? That'll be the next step.
Okay, so my next question to you is what are the implications from this decision?
The implications are that people are exerting their own personal beliefs and taking a statute that was created in 18, would you say 72,
1872.
and applying modern day technology that didn't exist in 1872 and saying, oh, this is what they meant, which obviously they did.
Well, I was trying to induce a response from you in reference to the implications of that this could spill over into the criminal arena.
Well, yeah, we mentioned that at the beginning.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, and because I think people really need to know that when you start talking about that this is an unborn child and this individual, literally he or she did not destroy these embryos. They didn't do that. I mean, he or she didn't do that. It was.
But what if I did? What if I walked in and got pissed off and took some vials and tossed them on the floor? Do I get charged with murder?
No, well, then the question becomes whether that is just simple personal property or then whether it is actually
Murder to a child.
murder to a child.
And that's and this
And I think that's the danger here
yes.
is when, well, the state of Alabama began to apply this type of ruling to the criminal homicide statute.
I think they didn't apply it to this ruling because it was a case of negligence.
I don't think that's what the opinion did, Paul. And I'm not going to challenge you on it, but what I'm going to tell you is that there were a lot of dissenting opinions, and they basically refuted, those justices that dissented refuted the suggestion that
It
there
would
was
never
no
criminal implications.
that there was no criminal implications.
Right, but the holding
They seem to actually to suggest that in order to be prosecuted in the state of Alabama for criminal homicide, then you really actually have to be something or
have to
somebody
be a live
out of the
person.
womb,
Right.
right?
But I don't think that, to me, I don't think that's protection enough because
I don't need
the basis that they used to say that this in vitro fertilization was tantamount to killing it is in vitro fertilization was tantamount to harm to a child. The same logic, if they allow it, can easily be transferred over to the criminal statutes. For instance, if someone intentionally walked into an in vitro lab and burned up all the babies, then they would get outraged, and it wouldn't be much of a leap to say,
What
well,
happens? Yeah, what happens when a woman who is, let's say, we were talking about that fourth day. So on the fourth day of the injections or the insertion,
mhm,
uh, she discovers that she's pregnant.
which a critical thing also. I know I'm cutting you off, but
You are
a critical thing to think about is she might not get pregnant. So why can she be? Why can you prosecute somebody when it's no guarantee that that's a human being?
I don't think the Alabama court cares about that.
Go
I don't
ahead.
think they. I mean, I don't think the Alabama court cares about that. But I guess I mean, so on the fourth day, she discovers that she is carrying what is going to be a baby, right? On the 10th day, she trips over a toy on the floor and falls down the steps, and now she can't have that baby. Is she charged with murder? Is she charged
In
with reckless
Alabama,
homicide?
in Alabama right now, the answer is no.
What do you? Well, no. Okay,
Right now,
I'm gonna let you well right now until a prosecutor charges her, right? Because I don't just as you just indicated, the opinion is really no protection that won't happen.
right.
They're saying that it won't happen, but if you have a prosecutor in a small county and says that, oh, I know she slipped on a toy, but also that person at the reproductive clinic burnt his hand or her hand and had to let the embryos go. And then there you have it. So anyway, it's a very, very interesting discussion. It is scary. Hey, Kenneth Stevenson, I see you're waving. You
I,
give me
I
the
want
peace sign.
what people think about. I mean, I
Deacon
wonder,
Stevenson.
am I in an echo chamber? What do people think about? Am I in an echo chamber when I say I don't think life begins at conception? Am I a minority view? I know people like to make statements that it's God's will, but it can't, in my opinion, it can't be God's will if there's a scientist involved
In
putting
the
it together.
state of Alabama, it begins when that sperm and that egg is put in that test tube. And you
Regardless,
better
yeah.
protect that test tube. If you don't protect that test tube, you're gonna have some problems. One, at least we know in Alabama right now, you're gonna get sued for wrongful death
No other
of a child.
state, no other
No
state
other state.
says that an in vitro test tube baby is a child.
Test tube baby. Remember one of the comedians, I think it was Robin Williams. He used to always not Robin Williams was white. Was it Robin? Well, there was the
I
black.
know it was Robin Hart, maybe.
No. It's
Black
Kevin
guy.
Hart. No,
He used
he's
to
black
call
guy.
everybody test tube baby.
Yeah, test tube baby. Man, what
Use
would he think
Bebe's
about
kids.
Bebe's kids.
Robin.
Yeah, with Bernie Mac.
It wasn't Bernie Mac.
It wasn't Bernie Mac.
was-
It was Robin. I can't. I thought it. I'm not sure Robin's last name.
It's like a
But anyway, y'all
shark.
y'all know who I'm talking about. Anyway, Paul, let's get to uh, let's get to the next subject here.
Okay.
Um, uh, well, they're telling me to go to a commercial. So our next topic is going to be, let me get it right here in front of me. Abuse or discipline. We've got a really horrible video and we tried to bleep out or mute some of the bad language that this woman is using. But we want y'all to tell us and whether this is abuse or discipline. Now, some of us old school people, I want to let y'all know that as those of you who are old school, I think you can recognize that this was the discipline that was appropriate back in the day. But today, is it appropriate? And so when we come back, that's what we're going to talk about. Don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back to Conscious Fever here on Ice Entertainment Television, Conscious Fever Radio. I am Carl Price, your host. You see what's next to me, abuse or discipline. So we're going to take, yes, we're going to take you to, I want y'all to see this video. Paul, I want you to take a look at this video because you're a family court lawyer and I know that you deal with abuse and neglect cases. I want to take a look at this video and I want to get y'all's comments. I will apologize initially that we had some issues with our comments because I know this is probably going to spark a lot of comments. But take a look at this, and then we want to hear from you all.
So, you be disrespectful to the oh, you know you finna get your ass whooped, right? Wait, I was fucking and I'm not paying. So what you tell her? What you tell get your ass. Get piece of work he ain't got, every work homework he ain't do, please send it home. I'm sorry. Please send it home today. You in that room until you die. Fuck wrong with you? This woman ain't gotta come here to teach none of you badass kids, but she do. But don't play with me. Make me get that call again. You ain't think I was coming up here on your ass. You look, I was trying to find you in that classroom. I will whoop you when you act up at.
All right. Wow. Conscious Fever, Carl Price, Ice Entertainment Television, Conscious Fever Radio. Here, readjust him. Paul Mullins.
Is that a real question?
No, that is definitely a real question.
Abuse or discipline? Can I dissect it?
Yes.
Okay.
Tell me, what was that abuse or was that
From
discipline?
beginning to end, it was abuse. It was
Okay.
it was emotional abuse because of the verbal language used. It was physical abuse. She swung at him with a belt and didn't care where she hit him. There was no point in it. She talked to him like she was trying to prove a point to a 6-year-old. What, he was 5 or 6 years old, trying to prove a point to a 6-year-old. He didn't understand anything she was saying. That was not discipline with any structure. That was just a beating. The kid ain't gonna know. He might know not to do whatever it was he did, but he would have known that with a different type of, even if she used corporal punishment, okay, which isn't always necessary with a kid that young. However, I'm not against it, but what she did was just pure abuse. She took a belt, she hit the boy on his head, his back, maybe his butt. She talked to him as if he was an adult and said, "Do you understand what the part at the end?" I couldn't even hear it. I mean, it's
Well, you
clear.
stop watching it,
I didn't
right?
stop watching it.
I mean, you stop watching because it is hard to watch. It is hard to watch. But let me just say this, Paul, in response to
Come
what
on,
you
man.
just said.
Come on.
I'm going to tell you this, that because I'm older than you.
No.
No, I know it's hard for you to swallow this. But because I am older than you, back before family court start doing what they're doing today,
What is it that
this was the norm.
Come on. Yes, it was the norm.
This was the norm. Did you
So-
see? Hold on. Did you see those individuals with badges on from the school just standing
They're
there?
idiots.
And I beg the question whether this woman got arrested, whether
Hope
she got
she did.
charged or anything like that. I don't know how the
She needs
video
some
is.
parenting
I know the
classes.
video got 15 million views
Wow.
when I saw it, so it's probably been around a
She
while.
needs parenting classes.
Greg said it is abuse and embarrassing.
It is because it's the stereotypical. It's the stereotypical thing that we see black women, or we expect black women to do to kids. People tell jokes. White people will talk to their kids. Black people, we beat the fuck out of our kids. That's funny in a comedic sense. But what we just saw is not necessary. That child, how did you think he was? He was in kindergarten? What could he have done that is so bad?
I don't know if he was in kindergarten, Paul.
He was in elementary school and he wasn't a fifth grader.
He was definitely in elementary school.
So maybe first grade, at most second grade. He was a little bitty kid. And if he's a badass, it's probably because his mama's a badass. He ain't got nothing to learn from. If your mama acts like a crazy nut, I guess you gonna act like a crazy nut. He didn't have nothing to learn from. I mean, it was abuse, and it ain't even close. It ain't even close. It ain't. And don't tell me that that's what people used to do back in the day, because that was abuse back in the day.
Oh, I mean, listen, Paul.
It was just excused.
It was definitely abuse back in the day, no question. But that was
He was begging for his life.
No, let me finish. That was cultural discipline back in the day. And I know it was bad. I mean, you never got whooped with a belt, Paul?
Got whooped with a belt. I got whooped on my butt. I got talked to first. Somebody said to me before they whooped me.
See that?
Okay, well, whatever.
That's what happens when you grow. That's what happens when you're raised in St. Matthews.
Stop.
I'm just saying, I know you don't want to hear that.
No,
but I'm just saying.
It's called. You can beat a kid just like if you beat a dog. If you beat a dog and the dog don't know why he's getting beat, there's no point in doing it.
The kid doesn't know. How do we know that kid had no other problems? Because she made it very clear. If I come back, if they call me one more time, I
She sounded like she was fronting for the teachers to make it look like she was doing something. Hell, your kid's a badass.
We're in a different place in time now, and so
you excuse
that? No, I didn't say I excused it. What I'm saying is that I can appreciate because I've seen that. When I was growing up, I've seen that. I'm not saying that my mother did that.
I do not like when
But I will
parents.
tell you that my mother did come with a belt with me once when I did something wrong. And in public, she walked in there with this belt in her hand
I
with my
got
uncle.
I got spanked in front of my friends when I was 16 years old.
I got spanked in the
16 years old, my
middle
mother
of
came in.
a big crowd with the belt. And I'm just and all I'm saying is, and so I'm not saying that just to condone what we just saw. What I'm saying is that I, I get it, but I also hope that maybe she was charged with something for that.
I mean, do you
But I
think
get it.
her
I mean, I
actions?
completely
Do
understand.
you think her actions built a bond between her and her son?
Oh, that's that. I know I'm gonna offend a lot of people because I'm gonna sound like Mr. Wimberly.
I mean,
That's family court shit, man. Listen, I'm talking about being in the hood and being raised in the
Hold
hood,
on.
and that
Just
was the
because
norm.
because you're in the hood don't mean you have to be what people want you to be.
No, I understand. I understand
She
that,
don't have
Paul.
to act like it just because she's in the hood.
She didn't act
Because she
like
feels
that.
like that's
But
the way
she,
everybody
what
expects
I
her
saw,
to act.
yeah, I know. But what I saw in her was a black mother,
Lack of
a
control is what you
black.
saw.
Yeah, that's what they say today.
That's what it
I
was.
saw a black mother discipline her child. And I know you don't believe that it's
No,
discipline, but
it
hold
wasn't.
on, let me finish now. I saw a black mother discipline her
Is that
child
what you saw?
in the way it used to be done 30 years ago. And it's
You were abused
unpopular
30 years
today.
ago.
Well, it wasn't, Paul, you were abused 30 years ago. We acknowledge that.
Not like that.
It
I
was
was never beat
abuse.
like that.
You never whooped on your
I
ass
got
with a
whooped on my ass, and
with a belt.
I was told exactly why it happened, but I was never whooped at school in front of everybody, so the parent could come and show out and say, "Look what I'm doing. I'm a good
I
parent."
don't think she was showing.
That's what she was doing.
I think she was mad. I think
Why
she was
did she
very
have
mad.
a conversation? Play it again. Why did she have a conversation with
Yeah,
the little?
play it again. It's just hard to see.
Conversation with him at the
Hold
end.
on, we're gonna play it again for you.
You
Paul.
whooped his ass. You ain't no need
Check
to
this
talk
out,
to him.
people. Check this out, people.
So, you be disrespectful to the teacher? Oh, you know you finna get your ass beat, right? Wait, how the fuck you been? I'm not playing. So what you tell her? What you say? Get your ass. Get up. Don't play with me. Now talk to her. Now what you tell her?
I'm sorry, but
Huh?
I'm sorry, but
Huh? You know, talk. Get your back in there. What
I
happened?
apologize for being the best boy.
Oh, we gonna have this problem anymore?
No.
No. Cause if I gotta come back up here, it's me and you. It's me and you. Everything gone. No outside, no nothing. If this fucking woman come in again, I'm gonna break your fucking face. Do you hear me? Have a nice day. And every piece of work he ain't got, every work homework he ain't do, please send it home. I'm sorry. Please send it home today. You in that room until you die. Fuck wrong with you? This woman ain't gotta come here to teach none of you badass kids, but she do. But don't play with me. Make me get that call again. You ain't think I was coming up here on your ass. You lucky I was trying to find you in that classroom. I will whoop you where you act up at.
All right, Paul.
Yeah,
We showed it to you again.
She's a bad parent. That's why she talked to the kid like it. Why the fuck you do this? Why you don't talk to your kid like that? Like he's
Times have changed.
like he's somebody on the street that you talking to. You square up on somebody like that, like you're a fight. That ain't how you discipline a child.
Times
That
changed.
is not times changed. That is
No, Paul, listen.
Let me say this.
In the 70s,
that's-
that happened. That actually happened in the 70s.
That is excusing bad parenting. That kid's not
bad parenting.
He's not learning anything except how to be afraid of his mom. He didn't learn nothing else. He apologized to the teacher, and she still beat the hell out of him. He apologized. I'm sorry. I want to pow, 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 pow. I'm sorry. And then she's yelling at him. Come on, that's bad parenting. She is yelling at him to excuse her bad parenting and make it look like she's a good parent.
I would agree.
In front of them. That's all it was.
Paul,
she's fronting,
Paul,
as we say,
I would
showing
agree.
out.
I would agree.
Bad parent.
I would agree that is bad parenting. I think that's bad parenting. But I understand. I don't agree with it, but I understand her disciplinary approach. That's the way it used to be.
If she had her stuff in order at home, he probably wouldn't be acting out at school. But if she acts like that in public, how do you think she acts at home? She probably talks like that kid all the time for the littlest things. That's why he's nuts. That's why the kid, and we're like, is something wrong with? Are you saying there's something wrong with?
Obviously, you are convinced that that is pure abuse.
Carl, it's
You're
because
getting extremely excited.
I think you're triggering me when you're trying to pretend like it's not.
I'm not. No, no,
That's
no,
all.
no,
When
no,
it's
no,
clearly
no,
abuse.
Paul. I'm not saying
We should
that.
be agreeing here.
No, I'm not saying that it's not abuse.
Then why aren't
But
you outraged?
I'm saying it because I mean, it's hard for me to watch too. But I don't have to be outraged. I've seen that
I've
when I
seen
was
it
a
too.
kid. I've
And I
seen
get
that.
outraged
I
every
saw
time
that
I
a
see
lot.
it.
So I understand that cultural discipline.
That is not
I don't
cultural
agree with
discipline.
it. Cultural
That is not
discipline
cultural discipline.
back in the day.
So you
Paul.
think all black people need to be beaten, yelled at, and
No, no,
screamed
no.
at?
I don't
and,
know,
and,
Paul.
and
Don't
cussed
give me
at?
that narrative.
And
Don't
cussed
give me
at?
that narrative
You said
because the way
cultural.
no,
You
because
said
the way you
cultural.
introduce that is not the correct narrative.
You said
What
cultural.
I'm saying, that's the way it used to be back in the 70s, in the 60s and the 70s. That is exactly the way it was. You can disagree with it if you want. You can come fast forward to
No, not all black people-
2024,
not all black-
and then all of a sudden say, she's just despicable.
She
But
is.
I didn't consider my mother despicable when she did it to me.
Well,
She didn't do it that bad.
that's because-
but
that's
when
because-
she did it
that's
to me,
because
so I'm
kids
just saying
love
that
their parents.
the only point I'm making to you, Paul, is that don't get too emotional.
I'm not emotional.
By using what you see today as the standard. What I'm saying is that
was not the
culture.
standard in the 70s.
No, no, no. I didn't say that was the standard. I said don't get so emotional from the standard that is out here today. The standard is that that's a crime. She will be in jail. She would have a child abuse charge here in Kentucky, right? No question. That's the standard today. What I'm saying very, very succinctly is that I understand that and I see that. I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't agree with it, but I see it as cultural discipline at one point in time.
What I see it as is not cultural discipline. I see it as cultural.
You wouldn't see it as
no.
cultural discipline.
I see it as cultural stupidity because people.
It didn't happen to you?
Well, right, but people see, doesn't happen to everybody.
Wait a minute.
People
Nobody ever. Your mother never spanked you.
No, some of us had regular parents. Okay.
She told me you got spanked by your mom.
Spanking is different. That is not a spanking. She hit the boy with a belt on his head and his back and tried to hit his butt.
It was either a switch when we were little. It was either a switch or a belt.
I got hit with a switch, but it was on the butt.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't just take something and aim randomly.
Would you represent her in family court if she was charged with abuse?
She paid me enough money. Yeah.
See, morals don't matter when it comes to money, y'all.
No.
One M, morals don't matter when it comes to the other M,
I
money.
represented people like that. It's like I couldn't take a moral high ground. I would try to tell them, hey, you need to come up with a better solution. This shit ain't working. But they need to people need to understand that that's not the norm. They need to see it done in a different way. And right now, if she saw herself in that video, the first thing I'd ask her is, I said, at every stage, when you're walking out of that building, what is that child learning? And when you're hitting him with the belt on the head after he's apologized, what is he learning? When you were leaving and you came back
on the head or just on his back?
Take another good look. She hit him on his head.
Okay.
And when you came back to him and said, "I will beat the fuck out of you," and she used the F word and she said,
I didn't think that was appropriate. My mother never did that.
Of course it isn't. And I'm telling you, she was showing out for the staff.
I don't think she was showing out. Anyway, we're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Conscious Fever, Ice Entertainment Television, Conscious Fever Radio. I saw in that piece my dogs, and they were real puppies. They're not puppies anymore, y'all. They're really, really big. Anyway, Paul, I'm going to give you the last word, my friend.
About which topic? The abuse, because I think I've said enough. But as far as the in vitro, that means out of the womb fertilization, creating a human being, and people being sued based on it being a child, perhaps in the future being criminally charged based on being a child, it's just total bullshit. And I'm not a judge in Alabama, but there were some dissenting judges. But that's total bullshit.
All right, so let me just say this. Obviously, I would just say my last word would be in terms of the Sweet Home Alabama piece that we talked about, is that if you're going to Alabama and if you're having sex, or even if you're trying to have a child, be careful because it seems to be extremely dangerous. And what I really don't like about this opinion is that there's a lot of people in the judicial system that believe that, Black women and Latino women are a lot more reckless when it comes to handling pregnancies than any other group of women. And so I fear that when this goes over to the criminal side, that there's going to be a lot of people of color charged with criminal homicide for things like this. And it's really sad. On the piece of abuse, my last comment on that, Paul, is my, have times changed. Thank you for coming, Paul. As always, thank you for joining us. Listen, my name is Carl Price. I host this show. It's called Conscious Fever here on Ice Entertainment Television, Conscious Fever Radio. Remember, you can hear me and another voice on South Preston Street podcast. There's some really interesting stuff to talk about because I have discovered that the person that does the South Preston Street podcast with me is actually an avid Trump supporter. Never would have thought that, but he is. So we're going to have some very interesting discussions. Anyway, this has been Conscious Fever tonight. Thanks for joining us. We will see you hopefully next week.
I was born by the river in a little tent. Like the river I've been running ever since. It's been a long
Can you get us back on what you know, please?
I was born by the river in a little tent. Like the river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh yes it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh yes it is. Then I go to my brother. And I say, brother, help me please. But he wind up knocking Father, to carry on. And It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes it is, yes it is, yes it is. Said I know that a change is gonna come one day. I know a change